that I was a part of. And so going through this, I was like, oh, this is going to be a breeze. And then rereading the book, I was like, I don't remember it that way. Sometimes in Unity, at least for me, I can get caught up in, oh, I've heard that. I know that. Yeah, they're just saying the same old thing. And then you go back and read it. And you ask yourself, is there something more for me to learn here? Is there something more for me to learn? And you get the answers. So it is with great pleasure that I wrap up our series today, and Reverend James kindly provided the title, Get At It, where we are talking about expressing God. And we could look at this as a book. We could look at these 5 principles that Unity offers us as nice sayings. In this morning's discussion, Reverend James pointed out that it was 20 years in the making before Charles Fillmore felt comfortable to outline and start condensing thoughts, Unity teachings into these, what ended up becoming the 5 principles. And I really want us to acknowledge that, because what we are being offered here is what this movement offers us, and it is such a gift. And our community has chosen to call it practical Christianity. So, yes, this is a book. Yes, these are intellectual ideas, but each one of these ideas is a roadmap, a compass, an opportunity to dive in at any given point and reframe our experience. Because what separates us from every single other species, as far as we know up until now, is our freedom to choose. Freedom to choose what? Well, it's up to us. Whatever you want. Whatever you're capable of at any given moment in time. And that's probably one of the greatest gifts that I have received from Unity is a different opportunity to look at my life. Because sometimes it is lack of information. How do we choose differently if we don't have better information? How do we make that leap? And so that's what I got out of this second go around. So let's just summarize. We'll see if my slide shows up. Principle number 1, God is all. If you don't like the word God, change it. Freedom to choose. Change it to life. Life is all. Energy is all. Universal good is all. Change it to something that works for you. I particularly like infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence is everywhere present. There is nowhere where it is not. Can we get on board with God is all? Yes, very good. Moving on. You are God. And I love these simplified versions. I so appreciate these being condensed down. I remember when Olivia, my oldest daughter, was in middle school, and she came home and was talking to me about that they were talking at lunchtime about the various church activities that the other kids were going to, and Wednesday night Bible or youth group or whatever it was, and they were sharing their individual experiences about teachings of their church and everything. And I said, well, what did you say about unity? And she goes, I said nothing. I said, well, what do you mean you said nothing? Why would you say nothing? And she said, Mom, I can't sit at lunch and look at my friends and say, I'm God. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? And I was like, okay, good point. I get that. This is so huge. And for me, it was a long road to get here. I'm an expression of infinite intelligence, just as everything around me and every other person. It's finally starting to land. People in agreement? Co-creating with God. Unity, folks, is not for the lighthearted. I'm sorry. It's for people who are willing to do the spiritual work. We had a board retreat a couple weeks ago, and much of that discussion was focused on talking about spiritual maturity. Meaning, if I am a spiritually mature person, I am taking responsibility for my thoughts, words, feelings, and actions. And when you understand that, you understand that you are making a choice of what you will create, because this is going on all the time. This is happening all the time. Creating our lives. I tell clients that I work with, and they say, well, I get these thoughts, and I think these things, and I tell them, you know what? Your mind is going to produce content. It's like YouTube. When you watch YouTube and you're watching a video, the video doesn't end, and then the screen goes blank. Another video pops up. It's trying to see what you want to engage in. It's looking for how much time you're going to spend on that video, whether you're going to click through it, whether you're going to give a like or a comment. And the mind's doing the same thing. It's producing content, and it wants to see what you're going to engage with. Our co-creative capacity is our divinely inspired gift. How will we choose to use it? I got some crazy stuff going up here sometimes. Crazy stuff. We get to choose. We have a choice. Co-creation. Everybody on board? Yeah. Communion with God. For those of you who knew Reverend Festus, one of the most powerful services or messages he ever gave, at least in my eyes, and I've never forgotten it, was when he said, we are always in prayer, and you are always saying a prayer, a yes prayer or a no prayer. It's that simple. You are always in prayer. And if we are in a prayer of worry, of doubt, of concern, of anxiety, then we are praying for what we do not want. Prayer is just an opportunity to align your antenna. What are you praying for in any given moment? What are you using this spiritual substance that we call God, infinite intelligence? How are you connecting to it? Because we're always in communion. You take the COMM, I'm just realizing, and you have union with God. Communion is an opportunity for union with God. Everybody on board? Okay. Which brings us to expressing God. That this substance poured itself into me, poured itself into Rich, poured itself into Patty, into Gerald, poured itself into each and every one of us, and can we accept the invitation that we are given because of that? As children, many of us are taught to compare ourselves to other people because that is giving us the information. Do I fit in? Am I okay? Is what I'm doing right now acceptable to the other people around me? Can anybody identify with that as children? We kind of use the comparison model to check in with ourselves and see if we're on track. And I have found that if I want to experience myself as an expression of God, that's one of the things I got to give up. Comparison. And I have to start standing in this space where I say, you know what, this is about me and my relationship to the divine, to this presence as I understand it. Many of you know that I listen to every Sunday morning, I listen to a Catholic priest by the name of Father Don Fisher, and just this morning he was talking about expressing God. And he was talking about the uniqueness that each one of us brings to this world, and how what is being sought on the part of the divine, on the part of God, what is being sought is for us to stand up and say, yes, I want to be in relationship with that part of me. God is seeking relationship with us. Wants to experience itself as us. And so, in the book, Ellen talks about using these principles, especially the first 4, as that direction, guidance. She even goes so far as to offer a number of questions, because this expressing God is more about being than about doing. That, let me see if I remember my slides correctly. Yes. Shifting consciousness. This is where we get a choice. At what level of consciousness do we wish to express? Because the power of God, the relationship with God, it's not that we're never not expressing God, but we can express at different levels. If I forget about God and think it's all about me, I typically will go into comparing myself to look for the external validation that what I'm doing is okay, acceptable, and right. When I remember to dive into one of the first 4 things, if I simply remember God as all, oh, if God's in everything, there is no comparison. I don't have to compare. I've just shifted my consciousness. I have just gone up a little bit in what I will create. When I remember, wait a second, I'm God. Oh, okay. So if God is everywhere present and all intelligent, and I'm God, then that same power is within me. And I go through the co-creating and the communion. It provides the shift in consciousness. We don't have to go there, but it's an opportunity. And while I was reading this, the book, the five principles, I should say, I was reminded of this beautiful book, Let Go and Let God, the Unity book of Lent, provided at Lent. And then I found out that, because what I remembered was the writings of the 5 Sundays of Lent. And then when I went back and I read it, the 5 Sundays of Lent are all written by Ellen Davenport, the same minister who wrote the 5 Principles. And I thought, okay, so practical Christianity, master teacher, Jesus. How did Jesus do a shift in consciousness? And I thought this gave a beautiful understanding of how he did that. And one of the things that I've really come to appreciate about diving into some Bible stories and things like that, I've come to appreciate the human part of Jesus' story, the similarity that he brought to the human experience, that he wasn't outside of the human experience. Because especially as a child hearing stories about Jesus, I was like, oh, well, he's, okay, Son of God, that's not going to be me ever. Except he provides the invitation. And so let's dive into a little bit of his human story. So the first lesson here is Jesus had to let go of human ego. Ellen writes, for Jesus, the act of washing his disciples' feet signified their oneness, and he urged them to humbly do it for each other. Servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. And I began to appreciate his ego part of himself that he had to learn to overcome in order to accept and be willing to align with that expression of God. And I found myself doing that this morning. Because whenever you come to speak in front of people, there's always like, what if I forget what I'm going to say? And what if I go up and freeze? I don't know if musicians do the same thing. But it's a reminder, okay, am I going to believe that this is all me? And that I have to meet certain criteria and certain expectations? Or am I willing to be an expression of God and be willing to trust that it's not me doing this and that I'm letting something flow through me? Can I stand in that space? But I got to let go of ego first. Oh. Oh. Oh, there's two stories here that I just could not even get over. She writes, Jesus was not a people pleaser. He never seemed to worry what others would think of him or how they might react, even when he knew they would be displeased. The earliest story of Jesus' letting go of approval was in childhood when he stayed behind at the temple after Passover. He offered no apology when his parents found him 3 days later. He said to them, "Why are you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" I have so much more appreciation for Mary. Can you imagine what Mary was thinking after she found her son 3 days later and he was like, "Why were you looking for me?" So appreciate the level of humanity. He seemed to feel no obligation to meet others' expectations, and he taught this lesson to Martha when he visited her home. She was bustling around ensuring everyone was fed and comfortable, while her sister, Mary, sat at Jesus' feet listening. Martha demanded that Jesus tell Mary to get up and help her, but the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." I would have been so mad at Mary. I would have been Martha. You think Martha might have been working for people's approval? Little praise, little pat on the back there. And lastly, later as he prepared the disciples to go out on their own, Jesus cautioned them not to be upset if they were rejected. "If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town." He never suggested that they could please all of the people all of the time. Anybody identify? Let go of worry. The Bible implores us to fear not some 365 times, and Jesus brought the same message. Don't worry. Most familiar is the Sermon on the Mount, where he expands on this at length. "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your span of life?" He had to give up worry. Now she's writing this in the context of his last week of life. Think Jesus might have had a thing or two to worry about? And he let go of worry, as well as fear. Let go of fear. How many of you have ever had the experience of being in fear and really just going there because it sounds so reasonable? So we stay in it because it sounds logical. Jesus clearly saw faith as the antidote to fear. We might think it was easy for him to have faith, knowing he was backed by the power of God. But the same is true for each of us. The disciples reflect our human fears, and Jesus models the courage of our divine nature. Jesus let go of being right. How many of you enjoy being right? Jesus did a lot of explaining during his ministry. He tried to describe the nature of God, the oneness of humanity with the divine, and our ability to live from Christ consciousness the way he did. He told parables, created memorable sayings, performed healings and other signs, all in an effort to help his followers understand their own divine nature and the impossibility of being separate from God. The impossibility of being separate from God. What he did not try to explain was himself, who he was, why he was here, how we should think of him. We've seen how he let go of others' opinions. Despite wild speculation about him, he didn't defend himself. He let go of needing to be understood. Even when faced with criticism, he didn't have to prove himself right. So what I hear there is Jesus was willing to step into his own authority given to him by God. And he refused to justify, explain, or defend who he was. How liberating to not have to justify, explain, or defend why or why not you choose to do something. Especially when it's chosen through your connection with the divine. Some people might not like it. Let go of the need for approval. Jesus let go of outcome. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived with him, and with him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given him a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Jesus put in the spiritual work necessary to let go of outcome. Not to try to control it, to let it be. To let it go and to let it be. And lastly, Jesus let go of physical life. We can be reassured that our spiritual essence continues after physical death. But the story also means that no matter what comes to an end in our lives, there will be a new day. We may spend time in darkness, but eventually the stone will roll away and the sun will stream in. The Easter story is a beautiful metaphor for the losses in our lives that lead to unexpected renewal. The losses may even be necessary. After all, there would not have been no resurrection without crucifixion. So letting go of physical life is oftentimes just the letting go of a chapter. And so as I was thinking about these things and how Jesus talked in parables and analogies, I came up with my own. God equals dog. Specifically, German Shepherd. So this is Kenya, and I was thinking about this. I got Kenya when she was a puppy, and I had her for about a year, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can keep this dog. She's so much work. But I got to thinking about this substance that pours itself into life, and how the presence of God mimics much of what I experienced with Kenya. See, Kenya needs me to experience a greater level of life. I'm the one who takes Kenya out in the world. I put her leash on, and we go out walking. And when Kenya's with me, I walk a little bit differently. Walk a little bit more self-assured. Even when people comment and say, oh my gosh, what a beautiful dog. She is gorgeous too, right? I walk a little bit different with her presence. When she looks at me, all I see is unconditional love. I am the greatest thing that ever walked, according to her. There is nothing above me. She looks at me with absolute adoration. Probably because I feed her. But absolute adoration. And she will do anything to protect me. She will do anything to protect me. When we go out on a walk, she's on a leash, of course, and sometimes, because when my husband walks her, they always do the same route. He's a habitative creature, and when I walk, we always go different ways. But she thinks she knows, and so she'll start to lead me. And here's the thing, people, this is where we have choice. Even though she thinks she knows where we're going, I can choose to go an opposite direction. Has anybody ever felt the pull of spirit to go one way, and you decided to grab the leash and take it a different way? And interesting, when I say that my husband walks her, this is the presence of God too. So my husband can go and do the same walk and have his experience with this same dog, and I can take her out later and have my experience with this same dog, and then we can get together and walk her together and have a completely different experience with this same dog. She's also up at the crack of dawn, checking in just to see if I'm alive. She's curious. She's inquisitive. She doesn't take things personally. She's always in the moment. And she loves more than anything when I say, you want to go for a ride? And she hops in the car. Doesn't matter where we're going. Doesn't matter what we're doing. She wants to go along for the ride. Sometimes it's to the vet. That's not as fun. But she's up for it anyway because she doesn't know what's going to happen. So I offer you, Kenya, maybe you have your own dog, to start thinking about the ways that you coexist with this energy that we call God. And most especially now, what it means, what your role in our greater community. Because as we started this, we said, get at it, which is a Myrtle Fillmore quote. Get busy using the truth you know, Love those around you in a practical way. Pay no attention to what others are doing, insofar as to make comparisons. Bring forth your own joyous world of love, friendship, beauty, and plenty. God is giving everything required to build such a world. There is within you the God-given intelligence to build such a world. Get at it. And I think we are positioning ourselves as a spiritual home and as a community to really step into this and decide how to support this community, how to enliven it, how to embrace it, how to interact with it. And I am so excited about this opportunity. But it's an opportunity that is available to us as we leave today. What will each one of us do with the God-given intelligence to go and create the world that is joyous, full of friendship, beauty, and plenty? I don't know what each of you will create, but I know we have a wonderful opportunity. And I, for one, feel very, very blessed to be in a community that I can come together and stand up and say, I am God. So, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Rich?
Absolutely great and inspiring.